What's going on, hybrid shooters? It's Jason Vong, and ever since I started this YouTube channel, I developed a passion for travel photography and travel filmmaking. I've done so in the last 6 years, and I do it professionally half the time, and the other half I do it for fun just because I really enjoy that aspect of photography and filmmaking. And this is really bad, but I'm the type of person that wouldn't mind eating a bunch of fast food while in a different country because I'd rather spend the time, save the money, and head to a scenic spot just to shoot. Thankfully, I have a girlfriend that disagrees with that logic and forces me to eat at all the popular restaurants that she has on her list. And I'm glad Vivian does this because I would not have discovered all these bombastic food on my own otherwise. For instance, we have a ton of Korean barbecue locations out here in the States, right? And I've only ever known it to eat it one way. But obviously in Korea, where the art and craft originated from, they have many different ways and style. And one in particular that I really love and miss is eating a hot piece of brisket with that square melted cheese on the while slurping on some cold noodles. It's like a flavor of explosion when you shove everything in your mouth. Yeah, don't take that out of context, but if you find yourself in Korea, find this place called Chado France. It's a chain restaurant. That's my personal favorite Korean barbecue place in Korea, but I am getting carried away here. As the title suggests, here are some advices from my 6 years of experience as a travel vacation photographer. And thank you PPA for sponsoring a portion of this video. So this first one's gonna sound like a super cop-out advice, but I truly mean it from the bottom of my heart, and that is actually enjoy yourself. Now, it might be a little bit different if you're out there shooting professionally for work or whatever, but especially so. Whether you're shooting professionally or on vacation, really enjoy yourself. It's an easy thing to say, but it's actually extremely hard to execute, especially when you're a photographer. I'm someone that can easily get carried away trying to shoot everything because I'm so enamored by all the new things that I lay my eyes on. And while it's not necessarily a bad thing, I often run into several of these issues when I try to shoot too much. One, obviously when you shoot too much, you end up with too many photos, and a large majority of them I'm just not very happy with. And two, especially when you're on vacation, when you're traveling with a significant other or with your family, you're kind of forcing them to have to wait on you, and it especially sucks when you're not getting the greatest shots. And this was a real problem for us when Vivi and I first started going out. We took our first trip as a couple to Japan, and I was just trying to get this perfect shot of this castle, but I ended up spending way too much time on it. I don't even know what the castle was called. That's how not present I was. On top of that, I was trying to shoot a YouTube video on the latest camera at the time, the Sony a6500, and I wasn't very confident at hosting in public. I would do about 50 takes, and I would wait until the crowd thins out before attempting the next take. And by the time I realized I should just give up, the castle closed. Now, I do this channel full-time, but at the time, Vivian was still at her full-time job, so vacation for her was very limited. So it wasn't very fair for her, to have to wait for me and to help me shoot my YouTube video. And what's sad was, by the end of all of that, I didn't use a single photo nor any of those takes in my final video, just this 1 second right here. But it's been 6 years since, and inevitably we found an approach that works for us. And that is batching our shoot schedule. I shoot early in the morning for sunrise and then shoot around sunset and through the night at the spots that I want to shoot at, rather than trying to capture everything I see throughout the day. And these are the pocket of times that I can spend as much time as I need to be creative for the shots that I want, and even do 50 takes for the videos. But the real reason to shoot around these times is that I typically find these are the best times for photos in terms of lighting, and I always end up with something that I love. When it's high noon, the lighting can be too harsh, so I either shoot more indoorsy stuff or just take a chill, spend time with Vivian, either eating at a restaurant that we want to eat or go shopping. And we found that to be an extremely good balance for us, but of course, it's gonna largely depend on your own relationship dynamic or your family dynamic, especially if you have kids. So let me know in the comments down below if you've already figured things out or you're in the process of figuring things out when you're traveling as a couple or as a family. But if you're someone that likes to capture the moment, let's just say you're someone who doesn't like going out their way to get the shot, you just like to have that moment happen to you and you happen to be there to capture it by chance. Actually, really, this is advice. This is an advice for anyone and everyone, and that is simply have your camera out of your backpack. with lens cap off, ready to go. Because when you're trudging through city to city, places to places, you will undoubtedly feel tired and exhausted, and God knows how heavy your backpack is carrying all that camera gear or whatever essential you need on a day-to-day basis. Now, of course, lightening the load of your backpack would definitely help a lot, but that never seems to work out for me, so the best compromise that I found was just to simply have my camera out the whole time. You see, during your journey, you will see things that you think, maybe I should try to capture that. But maybe you're tired, you're exhausted, you're getting a little bit hangry, and you're just like, I have to take off my backpack, dig through it just to find my camera to get this shot. It's fine, I don't need to get it. Or worse, you used your smartphone instead. Just kidding, in this instance, it's probably better to capture it on something rather than nothing at all. But going back to it, you'll start building up this resistance to take out your camera, and eventually you'll stop bringing your camera with you at all times and just rely on your smartphone. So when you look back on your trip, you go through all these photos again, you're just like, man, I should have shot this with a better setup. And this still happens to me despite my passion for photography and camera gear. It happened as recent as my latest Korea trip this past year, so I urge you guys to have your camera out the whole time, ready to roll. Now, of course, if you're in a city or town that feels a little sketch, I would say be careful. Just be very mindful of your surrounding. Have your camera strapped to your body, close to you as much as possible, and yeah, just be safe. Now we're gonna take a quick break to thank PPA for sponsoring a portion of this video. Now, I've spoken about PPA in the past before. They have great resources on how to become a better photographer, how to run a photography business, and their amazing gear insurance policy. Now, one other thing that they have is the indemnification trust included into their membership. Let's just say, for example, you're out traveling, you're doing work for a client, and all of a sudden your hard drive goes kaput. Let's hope that never happens. But in the event that it does, you can file a claim and PPA will help you direct you to a service that helps you with data recovery. But in the event that it doesn't work out and you can't recover those data, PPA will also help you navigate through this awkward situation that you will have with your client, especially covering some of those legal fees as well. To learn more about the indemnification trust, definitely check out the link in the description box below. And if you think this is something that you need, use my link to save $25 off your PPA membership. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Now back to the video. Tip number 3, take your chances. Now, with any travel vacations, I love getting landscapes and cityscape shots to establish the country that I'm in, so I make sure to get these shots. So the night before or early in the morning, I like to check the forecast to kind of make a judgment call whether or not I should wake up early to go shoot sunrise or shoot around sunset, but you really can't predict the weather, right? Sometimes they would tell you like, yeah, it's gonna be clear, but by the time you show up, it's gonna be really hazy or cloudy or dusty, or if it tells you it's gonna rain, it's actually gonna be sunshine and rainbow by the end of the day. So if you're in a place, especially when you have limited amount of time there, I say, F it, take your chances. There were so many moments I went out and the weather was looking really bad, and then after being in the location for some time, things actually cleared up. So for example, I had one night near Mount Fuji to try to capture it with the autumn leaves the next morning during sunrise, and I thought it would be a scuffed trip because of how thick and heavy the clouds were. It was completely masking Fuji in the background. But I still made the hike up anyways because I didn't have any choice. I only had one morning to be there. Even by the time I got to the overlook, it still didn't look like it was clearing up until this big gust of wind started blowing away the clouds, revealing the majestic Mount Fuji. Oh yeah, boy, Fuji sun is going out. Totally worth it. It was freaking amazing, and I'm so glad that I documented all of this on my Instagram story, because when I'm looking back at it, the moment just meant so much more to me, right? Like I'm so glad I captured my struggles and my sadness. I was just like, oh no, I'm not gonna get this shot right here. And then boom, the clouds, which is blown away by this gust of wind, and I'm just like, oh. And I ended up with these amazing shots with this amazing story tied behind it, so I can share this with you guys. So I felt like it just all worked out. It just worked out at the end because I took my chances. Now, vice versa, there were times where taking my chances didn't work out for me. We were in Hong Kong for a couple of weeks, and on the last week, I remember for 3 back-to-back mornings, we tried to capture sunrise of the cityscape of Hong Kong. I was there with my friend Alex Timelapse, Josh, and Vivian, and obviously we checked the forecast and everything. We're like, okay, this looks like it's gonna be a good day for sunrise, and then we show up, and lo and behold, no sun. The clouds were way too thick for the sun to pop out to illuminate the cityscape of Hong Kong, which was unfortunate. But my friend Alex was like, yeah, this is probably not the best time to capture the sunrise because we're early in the year. It's towards the later part of the year where sunrise would be perfect in Hong Kong. So anyways, I still took my shot, ended up with this time lapse right here. Not too bad, but that kind of leads into my foundation for my next point, which is make the best out of crappy weather. While we were in Korea just this past year, one of the things that I struggled with was the air quality. The city gets pretty hazy during the day, and the only good times for daytime clear photos with some clouds were literally the night after it rained. So thankfully that happened on a weekly basis. But even though I get defeated by the weather, I still shoot my shots anyway, and I'm so glad that I always do or did or whatever, because when I review them a week later in Lightroom, I go, oh, actually this photo is not bad at all. Maybe I can do something to fix it up. So then I would mess with the colors of the curves or the slider of the exposure or dehaze the crap out of it or use filters or presets that I normally wouldn't use and be surprised by the turnout. So I guess the lesson is just don't write off your shots. Just try to get creative in the editing room and see what you can do with it. And lastly, tip number 5 is to include people into your shots. I used to think tourism dilutes the culture of the area that you're in, like nothing sucks more than you setting up the perfect shot of this location and then you have on the corner of your frame that one tourist that sticks out like a sore thumb. Oopsie. I'm pretty sure I'd ruin someone else's photo or video just by simply existing in that location. But ever since the pandemic happened and then being in Korea, it just felt so sad and dead. This is Myeongdong. If you've ever been to Korea before the pandemic, you would know this place is always poppin'. And this really made me realize that I actually want people. I want to see people. And you know, you can't fight it. In the last decade, tourism has been so much more accessible to the larger part of the world that you can't fight it. You can't fight not having tourists in your shots. And especially now, more than ever, I think once travel restriction lifts, there's gonna be a flood of tourists everywhere. So you have to adapt to either creatively incorporate them into your shot or remove them from your shot. Now, I'm terrible at Photoshop, right? I can't object remove even if my life depended on it. So I try to incorporate some kind of human beings into my shot because personally, I think it helps make the photo feel more alive. Nowadays, I tend to stick around and wait for someone to walk by because it really helps add scale to the location I'm in or just add context to the overall location that I'm in. But most importantly, include yourself. And I'm really telling this to myself because I am terrible at it, which is why you don't see a lot of great examples of this right now. It's like I shoot all these great photos, cool, but where am I, right? I've been to all these cool locations and all these countries, but where am I? So don't let that happen to you, right? If you see a fellow photographer in the same spot that you're in, just hand them your camera and be like, hey, would you mind helping me take a photo? And you'd be so glad that you did. So hopefully these tips and advices will help you guys out on your next travel vacation. Vivian and I will be resuming our travels in September, so subscribe if you haven't already yet because hey, why aren't you subscribed yet? But definitely subscribe to follow along on our journey and we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.